Patrick here from Specifix Prep. Today we're going to be doing the passage-based questions from the critical reading section of the SAT. Now I find that for most students this is their least favorite section of the test, and this is true even for students who like reading in general or even for school. And there are two big reasons for that. The first is when you're reading for pleasure or for school, you don't have to understand every single part of a book, right? You understand the parts that you can get, and you build your understanding of the text from those portions, right? On the SAT, on the other hand, you don't have that luxury. You have to understand the parts that they are specifically asking you about. So that's one big difference. The second big difference, though, one that's a real sort of deal breaker for a lot of people, is for school, most people answer in their own words. That is, if you ask me a question out of text, I can sort of tease out an answer in my own words, as opposed to, on the SAT, picking from 5 options, right? These are the multiple choice options on the test. And those two things make the SAT critical reading a much different animal from what you're used to doing for school and obviously for personal enjoyment. So I'm going to teach you a technique today that's going to lift your score up, but it's going to require that you change the way you approach the section in a very fundamental way. So let's jump right in.
So the first thing that we're always going to do when we're dealing with a critical reading passage is we're going to read the italicized blurb that appears at the top of the passage. Now this serves 3 purposes. The first is that it provides a brief snapshot of what the text is going to be about. And this one says, this passage is by an English essayist, and the author contemplates the changing seasons. So that tells me, okay, I am going to have some sort of pensive, some sort of thoughtful sort of meditation on the seasons. Alright, so that's good. Now, obviously, it doesn't provide me a ton of information, but it does give me one really important thing that's not super obvious, and that is, it tells me how interested I'm going to be in this passage. Now, I personally read this and I say, wow, this sounds like it's going to be pretty boring, right? But another student might read this and say, this sounds pretty interesting. Now, your level of engagement, your level of interest is really going to have a big impact on how much you retain, how well you work through the passage on your initial read. So keep that in mind. If it's something that you think you're going to find pretty boring, you really need to focus. If it's something that you're going to find sort of inherently interesting, then good news. Now, the third thing that it does is it provides context, right? It tells you sort of what was happening, who's writing it, what was happening before, what was happening after it, perhaps who the characters are. So this is all really important information. It's a lot in just the 1 or 2 sentences that the italicized blurb provides. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, we're going to go through this passage. Now, obviously, this is not the appropriate format for this type of step, so I'm just going to fast forward and give you a quick summary, which is step 3. Okay, so step 3 is ask yourself, like, what type of passage is this? Well, this is clearly a narrative, right? It's somebody sort of sitting at a table thinking about how celery reflects the changing of the seasons. And now it sounds pretty ridiculous, but that is what is happening in this passage. It's a narrative passage, and when you see a narrative passage, you want to say, who are the characters, what do they do and say, and why? And we've just done that, right? Okay, good. So now that we've gone through the passage and we've identified sort of what's it about and who was saying it and why, now we're ready for some questions, okay? Now, the first thing you always want to do is try to tackle the more specific questions first, right? So if you look at the very first question, this particular passage, it says, the episode presented in the passage is best described as a. Now, this is not a specific question, right? This is a very, very broad, general question, right? And they do this on purpose. They put the very first question, almost always, as a very broad, general question because it's hardest to answer right after you finish reading, right? You're actually in a much better position to answer a question like this after you have a few easier to answer, more specific questions under your belt. So we're going to sort of lead this one now, and it makes sense to probably circle it or put a little check mark next to it or something that's going to help you remember, hey, this is a passage that this is a question rather that I'm going to have to come back to. Okay, so I get to the next question. I see that it says the narrator views the reddening leaf and the chill as blank. Alright, so this is really good. This is a more specific question, and it gives me a line reference. Line references are going to accompany about 85 to 90% of the questions on the test, so that's really good news. Now the next step is, after you've picked the question, I want you to go back to the passage and reread that part of the passage. Do not go from your memory. Right? This is basically an open book test, so it doesn't make sense for you to try to answer any questions from memory. So this particular one has us going back to line 3, I'm not going to start at line 3. Obviously, that's not enough information. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the passage and read most of the first paragraph and part of the second one. It says, "Last night the waiter put the celery on with the cheese, and I knew that summer was indeed dead. Other signs of autumn there may be, the reddening leaf, the chill in the early morning air, the misty evenings, but none of these comes home to me so truly. There may be cool mornings in July. In a year of drought, the leaves may change before their time. It is only with the first celery that summer is over." So, if I look back at the passage and I look at the question, I could say, well, the reddening leaf and the chill are, well, they are examples of things that might indicate summer, but don't necessarily indicate summer, right? In this passage, he says that, there are other explanations for these. But the celery is definitive proof that summer is over, right? So, in my own words, which is step 6, I'm answering this question, right? So I'm saying that the reddening leaf and the chill are examples of something that is sort of ambiguous or can be open to multiple interpretations. Okay. Now, step 7 is just go to the answer choices and eliminate answers that don't match what you said, right? So, again, I said, ambiguous, not definitive, right? I want to cross off answer choices that don't mean words like that. And I can even write the words here if it helps, right? We have ambiguous, not clear, arguable, blah, 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 right? Okay, so we have undeniable. Does undeniable mean ambiguous or not clear? No, it means the opposite, right? Process of elimination. Equivocal. Equivocal, okay, let's say that I don't know what equivocal means. Again, I'm really interested in being honest with myself. So I'm just going to put a question mark next to equivocal. We have it mysterious. Does mysterious mean ambiguous or not clear? It's okay. What I'm going to do is just put a little W here because it's a weak answer. I'm not crazy about that, right? Encouraging. Does encouraging mean ambiguous or not clear? No. Then innocuous. Innocuous. Again, I'm going to pretend that I don't know what that means. Okay, so if you were stuck in this step and you didn't know what equivocal and innocuous meant, you're going to be in trouble, right? You have 3 answer choices that are left, and you're probably going to pick the wrong one. And again, we see that vocabulary is not only really important in the sentence completions, but it's also hugely important in the critical reading section. So I know what equivocal and innocuous mean. Equivocal means not clear, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm going to circle B. And innocuous means harmless, which certainly has nothing to do with this passage. Now, mysterious, we said it was weak, right? And we're going to find ourselves in a lot of these situations where we kind of like answers, but we don't know if we like them enough, right? So mysterious is pretty close to ambiguous, but again, look back to the question. He doesn't view the reddening leaf and the chill as mysterious. He reveals them as not clear indications that the summer is going to end. So mysterious is not the right answer in this, even though it was an okay match for what we said, right? So you're going to find yourself in these situations a lot. I'm going to devote an entire other video to what to do when you're down to 2 answer choices and you're not sure which one to pick. But for now, let's just go with which one matches better with what you actually said and you know what all the words mean. And that's what equivocal means. Okay? And that's the approach, right? You go through every single question the same exact way. Read the question, go back to the passage, answer in your own words, use process of elimination. If you remember those steps, you'll be in very, very good shape. We're going to try one more question. Number 14 says, in line 24, bear most nearly means, right? Now, if you look at the question on its face, it seems like it's a vocabulary question, right? But if you were to look up the word bear in the dictionary, you'd actually find that every single answer choice is one of the definitions that exists for bear. So these are actually called vocabulary in context questions. And that is, they ask you not what does the word mean generally, but what does it mean in the context of this particular sentence, right? So we're going to go back to line 24. And line 24 is right over here. He says, a week ago I grieved for the dying summer. I wondered how I could possibly bear the waiting, the 8 long months till May. Okay. Now, I'm going to do something that's kind of interesting here. I'm going to cross out the word bear, I'm actually going to turn this into a sentence completion question, right? So if I read this like a sentence completion question, I can actually answer in my own words pretty easily, right? A week ago I grieved for the dying summer. I wondered how long I could possibly resist, right? Resist the waiting, how long I could hold up to the waiting. These are all words that mean what the blank should mean, right? The 8 long months till May. So now that we have a good answer in our own words, we're going to go back to the answer choices. And again, we said something like resist, something like endure, and we get back to the answer choices, and we have, let's see, accept. Does that mean resist or endure? Let's write them down just to be consistent. Resist, endure. Sorry, this pen is running out of ink. Accept? No, it doesn't match what we said, right? Support, resist, nope. Display, does that mean resist? Nope. Endure, does that mean resist or endure? You bet your butt it does. And then yield, resist or endure? No. Okay, good. Okay, so that was another example. These questions are really popular. You're going to see at least 5 or 6 of these per test. Again, they're called vocabulary and context questions. Alright, so let's do a quick review and talk about how to get these steps memorized.
Okay guys, so that was a quick preview of the critical reading approach. Okay. Now there are a few things to remember. First of all, vocabulary is still an issue. So if you go back to the sentence completion video that I put up, we still have that link to the vocabulary flashcards for the SAT. That is the 300 most frequently tested words on the SAT. Equivocal is certainly on that list. The second thing is 7 steps, right? It's a lot to learn. So I actually have all 7 of these steps listed out on my website. So if you follow the link that's in the information, you'll actually get a link to a PDF of all 7 of these steps with some caveats under each one. Really, really good information. Feel free to go there, steal it, download it, print it out, share it with your friends, do whatever you need to do, but you have to follow these steps in order for your score to go up. And the last thing I want to tell you, just like anything in life, this is going to take practice. I will bet you money that your reading scores will not go up immediately after you start using this technique, right? It's going to take practice. Why? Well, it's very different. You're going to need to sort of change the way you think about the test. And as a result, your score is probably going to go this at first. But once you get good at it, your score will do this. I promise you. I just took the SAT 2 weeks ago. I got an 800. I used this technique, right? So you have to follow the approach. So print this out. Go to the website, print this out. Get your blue book, open up to a section. Keep this printed out next to you while you're doing it and make sure you're following each of the steps. Once you get good at this, you will be awesome at the reading section. I promise. Okay, so next video we're going to go over what I referenced earlier, and that is what do you do when you're down to 2 answer choices and you can't figure out which one is better. Okay, so I'll come back in a few weeks and we'll have that ready for you, alright? Have a good one.